Okay. So if you would be so kind as to join me in this blessing. The English is, "Blessed are you, Lord our God, who enables us to study and be engaged in Torah. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu asher kiddushanu b'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah." Great. So before we begin to study together, there is a together here, meaning it is all of us. I'll tell you what my plan is, and then you can, of course, write me in the chat. Everything that I do tonight, we will email you tomorrow, so you don't have to worry about taking notes. It'll all be emailed to you. So I have felt over years and years and years that the Machzor and the prayer book shouldn't be a mystery to us. And we should have an understanding of when we walk into the service, what is the service doing? What did the rabbis mean when they put this service together? What did they want us to think about and get out of? What's the larger Uber picture? Not Uber to take a car, but larger picture. So tonight, I'm going to deal with the larger picture. And then next week, Bob Lebo, our dear friend, will be teaching individual piyutim, individual poetry, although I'm going to bring up some poems. So what I'd love, if we're going to do a rapid round of people unmuting. And I'd love for you, I'll call them people. So if you don't want to talk, just say pass. One thing, one part of the service that you either love or hate. Love or hate. Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur. And I can start. So I love all the music, and I think the theology of much of our medieval poems is problematic. Okay, who's going? One thing you love, one thing. Yeah, Debbie Brett.
Avinu Malkeinu.
You love it? You hate it?
I love it because it reminds me of my childhood. We had a chazan at our synagogue, but the rabbi always did Avinu Malkeinu. So
Avinu Malkeinu, beautiful. And we're going to talk about Avinu Malkeinu later because it's a really pinnacle point at the end of the service. By the way, if you're up to Avinu Malkeinu, it's the down of the service. If you think of our service as a mountain that we're climbing, we're towards the end by Avinu Malkeinu. It's one last try at beseeching God. Who else has something that they love about the liturgy or that's disturbing? Debbie, Dunn, Solomon.
I actually like the long list of things that we ask for forgiveness for. And I think one of the reasons that I like it is because I've read so many alternative translations that it opened my mind so that whether I'm reading it in Hebrew or reading the translation that happens to be in front of me, it prompts me to remember all those different ways of thinking about it.
So you like both the list of the Al-Chaitz and the modern versions.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so interesting, if you open different Machzorim, you'll find different versions, even among the Jews from different areas of the world. Okay, anyone else? One or two more people? Something, yeah, Martha.
I love Kol Nidre. When I was growing up, there was a woman who always played the Kol Nidre on the violin. And it just still haunts me to hear it, especially when I hear a musical rendition on an instrument.
So it's not the words. So listen to that. It's not the words but it's the musicality of it and the fact that all Ashkenazim in the same way. And if you go to Sephardic shul or Eidora Mizrach shul, you're not going to hear that same tune, but for most of us, we'll hear that tune. And by the way, if I'm saying words, Shiruthi, or anyone else that you don't know, text, put it in the chat to me and I'll translate. I'm trying to get it right. Okay, anyone else have one or two things? Dennis from my shul in Cherry Hill.
Okay, you actually hit on one of my favorite things, and that is the Baruch Hu in Merow, the melody that you used. It just pulls you right into the service immediately. it's such a gripping melody, and it makes the Baruch Hu so welcoming.
Yeah.
So I thank you for that. I love shofar blowing in the Moosa. The shofar for me is very much like Joshua blowing the shofar and knocking down the walls, and I like thinking about knocking down the walls that I have built up to prevent me from connecting with God.
Beautiful imagery.
And I really hate the Musaf martyrdom in the Yom Kippur Musaf.
Who agrees? Who finds martyrology difficult? Yeah, me too. Yeah, martyred rabbis. It's hard because it's theologically so problematic. Anyone else? Yeah, Cher, and then Linda, and then Freeman's, and then we're gonna go to the text.
Well, I've been blessed for a number of years to be able to lead the Shachrit at Yom Kippur, and the prayer that I most love is the Shema Kolenu, which is in the repetition of the Amidah, and it makes me feel very small and humble to represent the congregation and to beseech God to hear our prayers and not forsake us in our desperate times. But it's a wonderful prayer, and it's very humbling for me.
Thank you. I think it's Linda, and then the Freemans, and then we're gonna move to the next section.
Well, then it's appropriate for me to follow, because Hineni was what I was going to say. I learned part of it for the library minyan for a couple of years, and the music is so beautiful and it's so heartfelt. And again, I think that idea of the humbling. And the other thing I like when we recite our sins, that we don't necessarily claim all of them, but as a congregation and as a community, we stand together and identify with everybody and what they're saying.
I love that as well. Thank you. The Freemans had something?
One of the most beautiful things that happens is the very end, is the Havdalah, when the children come down and light the lights. I think it's really a beautiful way to end the holiday.
Right, and that's something important for us to know, that that's of course a new tradition. You know, none of your Babas or Zetas did that. That is something that is new, and of course new also is how so many shuls around the world now invite congregants up in front of the Aron Kodesh, in front of the Ark, to daven themselves during the Elah. That's my most moving part. I love that. So I would like to now transition to a next part, which I have a couple of things I'm going to go through with everyone. I'm not sure how long everyone thinks we should be here, but I always say cut the activity at its height. So we're going to go a little quickly through stuff, and then we can keep talking. I am going to screen share, which means I won't see all of you. So if you have something to say, I think you'll be able to just jump in and ask a question. Is everyone okay with a screen share?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so my favorite question is, Rabbi, how long are services? Someone asked me that. Someone asked me that. Someone asked me how long are services.
How long are services, Rabbi Merow?
It depends what time you get there. For you, it depends what time you get there. But if you want to have the service in its entirety, there is a flow, an ebb and a flow to the service. As I said earlier, it is like a mountain. The height of our service is what? Is revelation, is Torah reading, is hearing the words of Torah. So you'll see that the height is Torah reading of the service, and everything builds up to that. And then everything goes back down, and at the very end, we're drained. You are drained at the end of the service, or you should be spiritually. And so the last really piyut, the last ever piyut means poem, usually a medieval poem. The last piyut that we hear, Hallel Leah Garber, she lives close to us, but she's from my previous shul, but she lives close to us. So, and I had the zchut to do her wedding many years ago already. So the song at the poem at the end, Hayom Te'amtzenu, please give us strength. Why? That comes at the end because you have just climbed this mountain of prayer. You have just delved into your heart, your neshama, and you should feel tired at the end of services. So tired that you need to be strengthened. And thus we have that piyut. Before we go to actually this list, which is from a friend, a really good friend of mine, Rabbi Deborah Cantor. She used to be in Brooklyn, now she's in Connecticut. She was in the first class of women at the seminary. Good friend. She wrote this out years and years ago, and I said to her, can I type this for you? So we're going to look at something, but before we're going to look at a chart of how the service goes. But before that, I want to ask you to put answers in the chat. What's the goal of services? What's the point?
Gain spirituality.
What does that mean?
To be feeling that you're a part of it and that it's something bigger than yourself that you can join into.
That's nice. So that some of us want to feel that sense of smallness and part of a large community. But what actually are we supposed to get out of the davening, of the service? How is the service supposed to change us? So that's the question.
I feel like the topics that we go through are to reinforce or make us think about specific values.
Yes, and we're going to actually thank you. You were not a setup. I didn't tell you what to say, but I'm going to screen share unless anyone else has something they'd like to add about what's the goal of the prayer service. So I'm going to quote one of the great teachers of the 20th century, and that's Rabbi Sullivacek, prominent Orthodox rabbi of the 20th century. It says salivate, it's Sullivacek. And he had this ruling that if you did not have kavanah, intention, personal intention, at the beginning of the Amidah, you hadn't said the Amidah, you hadn't prayed. You just said it by rote. If it didn't enter your soul and change you in some way or make you think in some way, you're doing something, but it's not prayer, right? So let's go back to what prayer is in Hebrew. Does anyone know that? I'm sure someone does, but how to say prayer in Hebrew?
Tefillah.
So, right, so tefillah is prayer. To pray is lihitpalel. Lihitpalel, and for those of you who are into grammar, it's a reflexive verb. You do it to yourself. So even if you come and you participate, in order to pray, you have to be the active player in it. Or at least that's how the ancient rabbis thought of it. I kind of agree. It's not a sit back and relax kind of experience. It's how are these words changing me? Rabbi Sullivacek also taught that if you are only doing the words on the page, you're a parrot. The words also have to come from your heart as well. So going mumble, 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 amen, maybe making a minyan, but is not tefillah. Tefillah is when we are having the words pierce our heart and change us in some way. And does it happen every time we pray? No. Okay, let's talk about what I said, what I called this, the roadmap to the prayer book, to the High Holiday Machzor. And so I'm share my screen. Don't you worry. I will send this, have someone send it to you. So anyone who leads us or anyone, can you see this, first of all?
Yeah.
I'm trying.
Okay, I'll read.
Here we go.
Okay. Most
Rabbi,
people,
is there a way to make it full screen?
You can, well, it depends if you're looking.
it is full screen here. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's okay.
We tried it with Joel earlier, so
You can adjust it on your own screen to make
yeah,
it bigger.
there's a plus or a minus at the bottom of your screen, and you should be able to plus it
Yes.
out. Okay,
But we did it.
got it?
But
Yes.
Rabbi, you can plus yours too.
Yeah, no, it's not up.
It won't work because it's at the top of your screen.
What is halftime?
I'm at 100 already. Well, I'll try. This.
You're over 100.
There you go. That's good.
Better for you all?
Yeah.
Yeah, easy to
Okay.
read. Absolutely.
Oh, that's good.
Much better.
All right. So how many of you are athletes here? Jump in.
No way.
What's
Well,
your
even if you're
definition
not
of
an
that?
athlete, even if you are not an athlete, you know that the most important element of an athlete's day is the warm up and the cool down. It is true that in Jewish prayer, the warm up is as important as for an athlete. And so we don't jump right into the most important part of the prayer service. We do a warm up. We do it every Saturday morning. We do it every morning. I think you know what it is. It's called Psukei de Zimra. That's at the very top. And Psukei de Zimra, the words are verses of Zimra, Zemer, song, verses of song. So the entire first part of the service every day is just a warm up. It begins with hymns, meditations, blessings, the blessing that we just said, La'asok b'divrei Torah, to become involved in Torah. It then has the words Baruch she'amar v'haya ha'olam, which is the first time we really stand in the morning service. Anyone know what that actual prayer is about? So the words are Baruch she'amar, blessed is the one who spoke and then became the world. Our service, as you see on the left, starts with our recognition of creation, that we are part of a larger universalism. We are part of all of creation. And so the beginning, even on Rosh Hashanah, especially on Rosh Hashanah, which is actually the birthday of the world, the first part of our service is warm up. It is a time to open our hearts. By the way, if you're gonna, you might want to mute if you have noise in the back. So it's the time to open our hearts and nishmat. Birchot HaShachar, the morning blessings, and then we end with nishmat. Nishmat is I make a break every week on Saturday mornings if you're at our Saturday morning service with nishmat, because it means the breath of every living thing praises you. So this whole morning service is about creation and how we are connected to the rest of the world, not how I'm connected to the Jewish people. That comes later. This is, we are connected to the whole world. So what time do most people walk into shul? Most Jews. I'm new here and I still know the answer. After this part of the service. I always tell people, leave early if you have to. Not be there the whole time, but this is the part of the service, the part that Sher Lyman is going to be leading you in. That's the part you want to be here. The beginning hymns, blessings, meditation. Let me ask you, does anyone know what the difference is between this opening service on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur and every other Shabbat? It's a trick question. There really is none. The warm-up is the same. The warm-up is about putting the Psalms in our heart and singing and getting into it. And the ancient rabbis and I believe it's the most important element. You know, the early Hasidim used to come to shul an hour before services. What would they do? I don't know what they would do. They sat quietly and meditated. It looked very similar to what a Buddhist would do. They sat quietly. So even before the singing part, there would be a time to just sit. And I actually urge you to do that, whether you are at home or and watching us on Zoom, or you're in shul, get here early or get to your couch early, but come and don't be rushed. It's the holiest, 3 holiest days of the year. So kind of sit and be with that early service. The other thing you'll often hear me say is you don't need to be where we are in the service. It's okay if you're a little further or behind. Okay, I'm sharing again. If anyone has questions, comments, you disagree, jump on in. I think as many of you know, the next part of the service is the divider, Chatzi Kaddish, the half Kaddish, and that says we have now done our warm-up. And we're changing the tenor of the service, and even a little bit of the tune changes. You'll notice on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur mornings. So what are our themes? I think Debbie maybe said, right, that each part of the service has a theme. So these are the themes. The warm-up first, now we have the Shema and its blessings, but the Shema and its blessings have themes. They are God as ruler, and faith, and God's uniqueness. God is singular. So it's all the blessings before the Shema and all the blessings after the Shema. So that also, we have our tzitzit, and there's a lot of tactile things. Again, in the morning service, what might be the difference on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur? You'll see why I'm going quickly through this part. What might be the difference between a regular Shabbat and Rosh Hashanah? Efes, nada, bupkis, nothing. The difference is the tune. You'll hear different tunes, but the words are actually the same. The words are going to start changing in a little bit, and we're going to look at them. So everything up to that part, we're all doing together. It's what we do all year. Now you feel differently about it, but it's what we do every Shabbos. Debbie.
Isn't there more? Like, it seems like there's a lot more layered into to that basic ladder.
Not really. I mean, I'd like to say yes, but the layering in comes in the Amida and then in Musaf. The warm-up stuff this is the most familiar thing to you. And it's actually a good thing that, when the rabbis put together, well, Rav Sajja Gaon in the 9th century and beyond, when the Master starts getting put together, it's based on what you're doing every week. So the rabbis want you to feel comfortable in shul. So if you're someone who comes to shul some weeks, those first 2 sections are going to feel awfully familiar. The biggest change will be the tune, the nusach. Dennis, and then we're going to start getting into where the changes really happen. And the nusach, by the way, is what makes it feel different. And you all said that. Many of you talked about the sound of Kol Nidre, the sound of Baruch Hu. It's the tunes that are different up to this point. Yes, Dennis.
Just a couple of small things that came to mind. The Shochenad is a little bit different from the Shabbos. And also the the melody for Hamelech, yeah.
Right.
But the Shochenad, the Shurim Tis Halal, but Divrei Tzadikim Tis Barak, that changes for the high holidays.
Yeah.
The order, and the other thing is the Kaddishes, Layla.
Yeah, that's a really important, and actually we're going to start making that distinction where the Kaddishes change. The Kaddishes get the added Layla to show us that we are heightened. It means to go up, we are heightened during this time. So I'm going to go now back to screen sharing to get to the meat. Okay, silent Amidah, Avot V'imahot, Gvurot is God's power, Kedushat Hashem, which is sanctifying God's name. And now we have our really special insertions. And so you're going to give me one moment to move down in my text. I have to move all of you so I can see it. Okay, there it is. The words are, this is a regular, can everyone see Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu? Regular part of the actual service. And this is our first important insertion, the first change. If you would hear it being chanted, it would go something Misod Chachamim Unevonim Umila Metzat Mevinihim, right? Right here, it's the first part of the service that's going to be like, oh, this is very different. I wanted you to see what it says. Inspired by the insight. Someone else want to read? So I'm not doing all the talking. Someone volunteer to read inspired?
Sure, I'll read.
Thank you.
Inspired by the insight of sages and the teachings of those who acquired wisdom, I open my lips in prayer and supplication to entreat the sovereign of all sovereigns, the supreme ruler.
Okay, so this is added. It's added in the Middle Ages, and it's added to tell us that this liturgy is different. This day is different. And by the way, insight, I don't know if I love I love this machzor, but misod chachamim, what's sod? Sod means secret, but it's like a godly secret. A godly secret of all of our sages and all of those who have acquired wisdom. We're all standing together and we will open our lips in prayer. Eftechafi, right? I open my mouth. And then what do we do right after I open my mouth? We open the ark. So there's that mirroring. You open your mouth in prayer, you open the ark to receive that prayer. Beautiful kind of metaphor of that. Anyone have anything else they want to say about Misod Chachamim? It's the one part where people are like, wait, I can't sing along. Okay. And now you get to the part where you feel like it is the High Holy Days. Someone want to read it in Hebrew for us? Because it's in Hebrew and transliteration. Zochreinu.
It's just as easy to sing it because we all, I mean, for the Ashkenazi melodies, Zochreinu l'chaim, Melech hafetz b'chaim, v'chadveinu b'sefer ha'chaim, L'mancha Elohim Chayim.
Right. So Debbie, what's so interesting about that is that there's about 10 different melodies for it.
That's the one I grew up with.
Melech hafetz b'chaim, Zochreinu l'chaim. There's a couple different that you would know, and then of course in other traditions. But what is it signaling to us here? This is not a normal Amidah. And why do you think the rabbis put that in here? Put these specific words. Someone who hasn't spoken yet. The first time we see v'chatvenu b'sefer hachayim, and you should inscribe us b'sefer hachayim. Why? Why should you inscribe us? Lemancha Elohim Chayim. Zochreinu l'chaim, lemancha Elohim Chayim. God, you should inscribe us not for our sake, not for my sake, not for Polly's sake or Mike's sake. Inscribe us for your sake. It is a really interesting way of addressing God. What are we saying here?
The prayer requires someone to hear it and to receive it.
Yeah. The prayer, we're not praying in a vacuum. That we believe there's a God that we're praying with and to, A. And B, God, if something bad happens to us, it reflects upon you. If something bad happens to us, you're going to be the one at the altar crying. Oh, I'm writing high holiday sermons and I just wrote that line. Mm-hmm. But right, like it's Leman, that line is so interesting. Inscribe us in the book of life for your sake, God. Wow, what a theological thing to say. Not for our sake, for your sake. Beautiful. Anyone else want to say anything about it? So yeah, Joyce. I can't hear you. You're on mute. Joyce, you're on mute.
I almost think when we say that we're in a partnership with whoever, he, she,
God, yeah,
all of the above, that we're saying this, we need this space, that we need this connection, and it's not only for us but for you too. And I have and there are a lot of questions here that I can't even say. So I think it's a very poignant piece.
It really is. It's so compelling to say that God needs our prayers, and the listener, Linda, the hearer of the prayers, needs them. And the rabbis wrote that in the prayer book, Lemancha Elohim Chaim, for your sake, God.
Mhm.
It's also the first moment in the service where we will be singing communally in a tune that feels like it's the high holidays.
Mm.
The Amida has its own tune, Baruch Atah Adonai, but you're not necessarily singing along. When you get to Zoharenu, we are all singing along. So it feels like there's something incredibly communal about it. And even not more than the El Chetz, but as the El Chetz, we are together. That's where we need to be, together. Whether that this year, last year, in this crazy world we're living in, whether it's via technology. Do you ever think about that in 1918 when the flu pandemic happened? Nobody got to go to shul. So we're kind of lucky that we have technology, even if it makes people feel apart from each other. Michelle, and then we're going to go back to Moosa.
I think for one reason, the way it's written in this machzor, it really highlights that it mentions Chaim 4 times, and it's sort of pointing out that this guys is about your life,
Yep.
Your spiritual life, your physical life. So.
No, Leman Elohim Chaim, and you, God, are the living God, is the end piece of it. Our Chaim is connected to your sense of being the living God. Okay. So you are now at the warm-up still, right? Shacharit's the warm-up. By the way, just so you know, I will not be with you for Shacharit. I will be outside in a tent because we have other people in our community who are young people. And so they're going to have a family service with me and the cantor outside and Sharon. Okay, let me go back to move all of you.
Comment while you're doing that, if I can jump in for a second, Rabbi.
Okay, who is it?
It's Lee Gerber.
Lee, we can barely hear you, but jump in.
Oh, can you hear me better now?
Not really. It's a little bit, maybe you can get up to the mic better.
All right, can you hear me now?
Try it.
Okay. So you mentioned, the 1918 pandemic, and one of the things that I always think about with the High Holiday Service, and especially, the past year, is them trying to make sense of their world and, what happens to people without knowledge of modern medicine and germ theory. It's like, who will live and who will die? Like, who even knows what's going to happen to us? And I think it has even more resonance, last year and again this year, in the midst of a pandemic.
Thank you. And I think I'm turning this off for a second, which is that, I didn't mention, thanks, Leah, that probably the most interesting / problematic / prayer that you love / prayer that you don't love is Unatana Tokef. Unatana Tokef is the prayer I think you're referencing. Who shall live and who shall die, and how each of us shall live or die. I'm sure many of you have heard the Leonard Cohen version, right? So do any of you believe that theologically an outer supernatural being, God, decides if you're going to get cancer, God forbid, or be in a car accident? Anyone? Yeah, it's a really hard theological concept, especially post-Holocaust, to think that those words are not metaphor. And remember, they were written a really long time ago, and they're poetry. And so we have every right to interpret poetry, to think about the quality of our lives, and not that there is an outside force deciding when our time is up or how we will die. I think it's important for us to understand that we are not punished for illness. We are not punished by our illnesses or by accidents. Sometimes, as Harold Kushner wrote, bad things happen to good people. And so I I fear people putting too much effort or time into the Unatana Tokef. It's, maybe it's about making our lives count in any given year, or knowing about the frailty of life, but not blaming each other for illnesses that we get, or for how we end how our lives end. Anyone want to respond to that in any way? Okay, who loves Unatana Tokef? Anyone?
I'd like
here?
to chime in.
Yeah, who is this?
Yeah, this is Eleni.
Hi, Eleni.
This is Eleni. I'm the picture of the lake.
Yeah, we see.
So I think about the Natana Tokef, that it encourages us to appreciate that we don't know what will happen in the coming year. And so I interpret it not as a decree, but that I need to be prepared really for anything to happen. It's a big challenge, and it's likely that most of the things that I would consider are not likely to happen. But 2 years ago, I don't think we could have imagined that I'd be talking to you now by my cell phone.
Right, and you actually are, what you said, thank you, because you did exactly with the poem what we're supposed to do, which is contemporize it and make it relevant for now. I agree with you 100%. It is not that on this day God is deciding who shall live and who shall die, but that we are being made aware that we might live or die. Amen.
And if I could just add to that, it's in what you and others said earlier, we're in partnership with Hashem. So we're going to make choices that could influence whether we live or die.
Absolutely.
And presumably God will make choices that we just don't have access to how God is going to make those choices. But they'll be out of our control, is how I take it.
There is parts of our lives that are out of control. When you said 2 years ago, you didn't know that, right? I mean, that we would be speaking like this on Zoom. I actually thought that 2 years ago, Rabbi Feldman would be speaking to you.
Mm.
And he was my friend.
Yeah.
So it is that sense of the frailty of life, and that on the high holy days, we are made to stop and think about our actions, so that if my life ends, God forbid, tomorrow, there wouldn't be any apologies needed. I would have made good to each person in my life. For me, that seems to be the point of all of these high holy days. So maybe I should stop and say, before you even walk into shul, what does Maimonides tell us we need to do? We need to do tshuva. And tshuva, returning, not shiva, shuva, to shuva, returning, according to Maimonides, is to recognize what we've done wrong, regret it, resolve not to do it again, apologize, and then go back to a situation where we could do it again and act differently. So more than tonight, the most important thing that any one of us, including myself, can do is call our family and friends, apologize, write letters to our family and friends, or emails, or like come into Rosh Hashanah doing what we need to do before Yom Kippur, which is apologize. Think about what we've done. Think about who we are. And who we are is who we are to other people. Then think about who we are to God. Okay, I'm going to go back to the service. Thank you, Leah, for that important. Yeah. Okay, sorry, I'm getting my Zoom on. Okay, so I'm back in the service. So far, you've had the introductory Psukei de Zimra. Most people don't get there, but I urge you to come for that. That's the most important part. Warm up, get your prayer on, have some quiet time. Then we have the regular part of the service that feels like the rest of the year, Shema, the blessings before the Shema and the blessings be after. Then we have Silent Amida, which has those special holiday insertions. We're going to look at them in a second, the Uvachains. But then after that, we have Avinu Malkeinu, which we heard a drop about. So I want to go to the Uvachain section. I think I put it in here. No, I did the 3 piyutim. So in our service, we now have 3 different options in this prayer book, but in other machzorim, there are many, many, many. It says 3 piyutim introduce the Kedusha. By the way, that English helps no one if you don't already know what those words mean. So I'm going to actually translate this. 3 poems introduce the holiest part of the Amidah. So must these poems be done? Do we have to do these? Anyone know? Well, last year you certainly didn't. As we tried to make the service shorter, most places, including here, didn't do all those added poems. Why? Because they're not prescribed by Jewish law to do, and we wanted to streamline services. Okay, now we get to the paragraphs that are different for the high holidays. Uvachain, uvachain, uvachain. You see it in the bold here? And here, uvachain, it doesn't translate it, but it's really means, and therefore. It's the beginning of each of these really important high holiday expressions of our prayer. Often people just, either you do it in the silent Amidah or you listen to the cantor, and it's usually done pretty quickly. But this is actually really important part of the service. These 3 uvachain paragraphs. Uvachain tein pachdecha. Give to us, God, pachad. What's pachad? It says awe here, but it's actually fear. Awe and fear. Remind us, God, at this time of the creation of the world, that you created us. As far as we've come, let us know, remind us that all of creation is yours. You did all of that. This is a part that many of you sing. Right? So it's the ultimate part of the paragraph, the very end of it, and it's not a bracha, as you see. It's not a blessing. There's no baruch atah in it. These are just 3 sentiments of faith in these 3 paragraphs. So the first one, you are sovereign over all of creation. The second one, uvachain tein kavod. What's kavod?
Honor, respect.
Yeah, honor and respect. What must it have been like to sing this if you were living in the Pale of Settlement, or you were living during the Crusades, or you were living in a place where Jews had no rights, or during the Shoah? Uvachain tein kavod. Give to us honor. This, I think, is the most important historical piece that we'll sing that day. Give us kavod, honor. But talking about partnership, how do you get honor? By our own actions as well. Then in the italics, simcha le'artzecha, bring joy to our land, v'sason le'irecha, and joy to your city. What's this a reference to? I'm not talking about Mercer County.
Jerusalem.
Yeah, Jerusalem, and Jerusalem as the center of the Jewish people, and Jerusalem as the idea that we are not in a diaspora anymore. That we are that we have agency as a people, which we do now. Okay. So, but for most of Jewish history, this paragraph was such a fervent prayer because they didn't have a place. They had a memory of a place, but they didn't. It's much different. And you know, if any of you have been to high holidays in Israel, it's much different to chant this when you're in Jerusalem. And I hope that you will at some point. Okay. Uvachain tzadikim yeru v'yismachu. Anyone? Now we're talking about individuals. First, we were talking about all of creation. Then the second paragraph here, we're talking about, do you see my arrow when I'm doing the arrow?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
And in the second paragraph, we're talking about the Jewish people. And now finally, we are talking about the individual. So the prayer goes from universal, first paragraph, second paragraph, Jewish people, third paragraph, individuals. That each one of us as an individual could be a tzaddik, could be a yashar, could be a chassid. Individual people have rina. Individual people have emotions. People don't have, nations don't have emotions, individual people. So here in this big high holiday page, so sorry, someone was writing me there. Okay, so in this big high holiday experience, we are taught to remember first that we're part of all of creation, connected in a universal way to everyone. Then that we're part of the Jewish people, but ultimately our own emotional life, the ability to feel joy, rina, gila, is about our own actions. I'm not sure that we often remember that, but we create, even, listen, you can have a terrible year, you can have a lot of loss, you can have other things, but you can still figure out a way to create joy. It's up to the individual person. Okay, I'm going to go back to the service unless anyone has something to add.
I have one thing to add. I always think of the last paragraph as being really about having messianic implications, and that the joy is really that if you have kind of the first two, you kind of finally reach a place where you can where everything is good and all wickedness is gone, and and
maybe, but Michelle, this paragraph could be about you being the Messiah.
It could be, but it doesn't feel that way to me.
Or anyone, because listen, the righteous beholding this will rejoice, the upright will be glad, the pious will celebrate with song. That should be every single person on this Zoom. We all have the potential to be righteous and upright. We all have the potential to be pious. And then when we are all doing those things, then evil will disappear. So yeah, it may be about the messianic dream, but the messianic dream here is because of my actions and your actions. If there's enough tzaddikim in the world, if there's enough people doing good, and that's the whole point of the high holidays is wake up, you slumberers, change your behavior. And then Michelle, then we'll see the Messiah. Amen. Okay, give me a second. Oh, I'm up to Moosa, so I have to go further back. Okay, Torah reading. So, day 1, birth of Isaac. Why is that important? I mean, Abraham already has a son. Why is the birth of Isaac important?
Because Isaac carries the tradition of the Jewish people.
Yeah, because if not, there's no Judaism. There's no carrying it. So this, on the birthday of the world, we read about the birth of our people. And then on day 2, yes, the ram to the rescue. The ram is where we get the shofar from. But really, what is the binding of Isaac besides the 21 most troubling verses in Torah? So the binding of Isaac, as Shalom Spiegel wrote, is about the test of God and God testing Abraham, and a test of faith. And it's a test of faith, by the way, that I think all of us would hopefully fail, right? No one would agree to sacrificing their child. And so maybe in the end, it was the child was never going to be sacrificed. I hope. Next, really important part of the service is the Shofar Service. Of course, not on Shabbat. Why is the Shofar Service important? Why is it here and not just later?
because people are still in shul.
Yes. Yeah, it kept people in shul more than the rabbi's sermon would. It kept people in shul, but also was connected to the Torah reading, to that ram. And it was a way of saying, even if you're going to go early, you're going to listen to the shofar. And the shofar, again, is about connecting us to that test of faith, telling us to wake up. Okay, I heard before the word that Hineni was really important to people. So someone want to describe what Hineni is?
Cantor's prayer.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's the davener's prayer. So whoever's leading the davening should be leading it. But I actually think read along with it, especially in our new Machzor, because you'll see that it is anyone who's helping to lead the service, your Shacharit daveners, anyone, it's about giving them the wherewithal to lead us in prayer. Okay, so let's go through this and then we'll look at individual texts. By Moosa. Nancy Lewis, is Moosa too long? Yeah, most people think
Yes,
Musaf-
yes.
Yes, most people think Moosa is too long, but it is the highlight of even though we're going down the mountain, from going up from the height of Torah reading, of Revelation, the Musaf service on Rosh Hashanah, which includes 3 important parts, 3 thematic parts, really is kind of one of the most beautiful. So the reader's repetition of the Amidah, and we have Untitled Chapter, right? Where hopefully we think about the frailty of life. And then we have the 3 sections. So kingship, we wrote this a while ago. I would say sovereignty now, not kingship. Sovereignty, remembrance, and shofar. So let's talk about sovereignty, remembrance, and shofar. Sovereignty. Why sovereignty on the day of Rosh Hashanah? Why talk about God being the sovereign?
So I would suggest that maybe it's because if you're feeling frail and weak and out of control, then you might want to believe that there is an all-powerful being, spirit, ruler that is in control. But this kind of also goes back to, I wanted to throw something in about, we were talking before, Michelle raised the question of whether it was really messianic talk, and the idea that, you could silence evil and tyranny by creating a better, world. And I think that was a lot easier to believe when you couldn't see past the shtetl or your own town. And now with global awareness of all the horrors, both man-made and not, but even just the tyrannies, that exist, it's a lot harder to say that it's something that you can impact.
Oh, but impact, you must. We must. We as Jews may not walk away from services or anything thinking that we can't have an impact. That is part of this service. That is part of the message of the Jewish people to say, God created this world. We are partners. Someone was talking about that earlier. We are partners. And even if we see far and see how hard it is, even, we can help. We can make it better. Because if not, what are we doing here? No, we are here, God's sovereignty, but also that we have the power to impact the world with God. And that's why the next one is Zichronot. Zichronot is my favorite. If you are here on a Saturday morning, you will know it's my favorite because I love the psalm where we go through at the early morning service. What were the troubles of the Jewish people in the desert? Zichronot are remembrances. And they're not the bad times, or they're the bad times, but how God was with us in those times. Zichronot, to remember. The next one, shofarot, one last chance at the shofar to be blown and for us to remember that we're supposed to change and wake up. So I want to show you a few of those texts. I was planning to go to about 1:15. Is that okay? Maybe a little earlier. You should never end too late. Remember, you will get this tomorrow, emailed to you. Malchuyot, God's sovereignty. So the very first prayer we have, this is our oldest prayer. By the way, I think many of you know that Aleinu that we sing every week came first in the high holidays and then made its way back to the rest of the prayer book. And the version that we chant is, of course, not the version that was chanted for thousands of years. Anyone know that version? So in that version, it said, Shehem mishtachavim lechevel varek, that they, the other people of the world, bow down and pray to nothingness. How would you feel about saying that? I hope not good. And we don't say that. Certainly, but by the way, in an Orthodox synagogue, they do. We do not. There are some Reconstructionist synagogues that have actually changed it even more. The ours says, "Shelo asanu k'goyei ha'aretz." So you've made us not like the other nations. And then there are some beautiful translations where they'll actually change the Hebrew and put it into positive language. Instead of shelo, the Aleinu will be turned on its head into, but you have made us as such. How many of you, I want to see everyone's face, but I want to keep the share, so I'm not going to. How many of you have ever done the Aleinu? Like bowed during the Aleinu? Yeah, so I want to recommend it to everyone. And especially if you're home, there's no one's going to see you. But there is something incredible about fully bowing down to the Holy One. Even more so on Yom Kippur, but on Rosh Hashanah as well. And so Aleinu l'shabeach, and we go down and we go all the way down, or halfway, most of the way down. And if, I don't know, if any of you have done that before, what does it feel like? Would you be willing to share? Yeah, Michelle.
So at Farbrengen, we always do that and get on the floor. And I mean, the hard thing is that you're sort of there and you're on the ground and you're trying to feel it, but then the prayer keeps going. So I just find that kind of conflict with the feel of really.
Yeah.
Down.
You know, when I've actually led, one year my cantor got sick and I had to jump in, and I was like, I'm going to really slow it down here. It does feel like you want to sort of be in that moment of submitting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Has anyone ever seen a priest take a vow or a nun take their vows? Yeah, this is what they do. They got it from us. It's fully bowing down low and not being able to see anyone else in the room. It's just you and God. Something very visceral about it. I really recommend it. Unless you think you can't get up. Yes.
I'm not going to tell the joke, but there is a joke where the punchline is, look who thinks he's nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
Some of you have heard.
Exactly. Look who thinks he's nothing, or look who thinks she's nothing. Absolutely. But if you're in a community where lots of folks are doing it, then it doesn't become showy and it just becomes part of the, this is what we do as part of our religious practice. But you're right. If you're the only one doing it, it's hard. On the other hand, if you're the only one doing it on Zoom at your house or on live stream, no one sees you. Okay. All right, we're going. Anyone else want to talk about what they've felt like during Aleinu? Okay, Malchuyot, Aleinu, and then all kinds of verses about God's sovereignty. Zichronot, the verses of remember. By the way, what do you do if the service isn't speaking to you at any given time? What do you think you should do? What? You have permission to get up and walk around, or take a walk, or read the beautiful poetry, or meditate. Because remember, what's the goal of being at high holiday services besides seeing each other? Right? Actually, the goal is lihitzpalel, to be reflexive and to look inside. Be reflective. So if something in the liturgy is not helping you to do that, do something else. Okay, so zichronot, these are beautiful remembrances. This year, I plan to talk a little bit on zichronot about some of the things we remember from the last year and a half that have helped us get through, right? Where you may have felt God's presence. I'll tell you one of the places I have felt God's presence in the last year. Were any of you in a city at all where at 7 o'clock at night, people were banging pans for all the healthcare workers? I felt like at those moments, one time I was in downtown Philadelphia and I heard it, and it's pretty compelling to feel like God's presence is with all these people. So the last set of blessings, shofarot is really, and by the way, in each, there's 10 to 20, depending on which machzor you're using, blessings, different verses about each of the themes. So I had then planned, and I don't have a lot of time left, but I had planned to go into the words of Untitled Chapter because I think they're so important, but we talked about them a little bit earlier today. I think this part, the end part of Untitled Chapter, how many will pass on and how many will be born, who will live and who will die, is less important than this line. A still small voice will be heard. What's that still small voice? That to me is the most important line in Untitled Chapter. What's the still small voice? Someone who hasn't spoken? Yeah, Myra.
I think it's the voice of our soul inside of us talking to us.
Your soul, your conscience, your neshama, really your soul. The still small voice. Maybe it's God within us speaking to us. That the other stuff in Untitled Chapter, whatever, who shall live and who shall die, reminds me of the frailty of life. But the still small voice, to remind ourselves and be reminded that this holiday period and the 10 days in between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur are all about listening to that still small voice. And then if we're able to do that, we've done the holiday. One of my favorite prayers is at the very end. I said it at the beginning, Hayom Te'amtzenu. Hayom, Hayom, Hayom Te'amtzenu. Bring us strength. Bring us strength. So let me ask you a question. What do you think would be the most important, if you could only come to one part of the service, what's the most important part for you?
The shofar.
The shofar, what do you love about it?
The sound of a shofar, I think, is very, sort of touches your soul. It's very awakening.
Nice. For those of you who don't want to be inside shul, in my alternative spiritual experience, Leah, I am doing that this year here at 4:15, first day of Rosh Hashanah. That will be a service for people who can't sit through the regular long service, but it'll be more chanting and meditation and learning, and there'll be shofar blowing at that as well. There'll also be shofar blowing outside on the 12th, the first day of religious school, on a Sunday, if you feel like you need to, you want to be in the presence of the shofar blowing, but you don't want to be inside the building. Because first, pikuach nefesh, first keep your body safe so your soul can be safe as well. Anyone else, what other parts are most important?
Well, I like the Torah reading.
Yeah, me too. Me too, Merow.
Because I like the Torah readings. I like the trope. Why do you like the Torah reading? You like the stories?
The content,
The
the
content.
story of Isaac,
Yeah.
the
And
binding
the
of
story of
Isaac.
Sarah.
Poor Sarah.
I know whenever I read that story, I think about the great Midrash. So, you know, the Chaye Sarah, the Parsha of Chaye Sarah is right after the binding of Isaac. She dies.
Right.
So there's a Midrash, you know, this Midrash that says why she dies. So the Midrash, the rabbinic story is that Satan, actually Satan, goes to Sarah and says, you know where your husband is? With your son, and he's going to go sacrifice your son. And Sarah is so verklempt, although she wouldn't use that word, that she jumps off the roof and dies. And then we have Chaye Sarah. Sad, but it is a compelling story of faith and of what we don't do today. We don't sacrifice our children as a note to our faith. We hope not, right, Myra?
Yes.
Okay, so let me tell you, my favorite part of the service is actually all of it, is the flow of it, is how you can start at the beginning and say, okay, it's time for the warm-up. And there is a time in the middle of the service where all of us get tired. We're human, right? And we can't actually put food in our talus bags now. Eat in the, but where you're tired and you need to be strengthened. And so by the end of the service, you have Hayom Tzedakenu. I also love that the Rosh Hashanah service is short compared to Yom Kippur. Right? It's like almost like getting you ready. What do you have to do between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur that you could do right now?
Apologize.
Yeah, apologize. Or else, frankly, the ancient rabbis would say, don't bother. Don't bother coming to shul if you have talking to the Kadosh Baruch Hu, talking to God, if you haven't made it right with your family and friends first. And so that's all of that Rosh Hashanah service is supposed to be to open our hearts so that we can go to the people we've wronged, and we've all wronged. You know, I would say especially me. We've all wronged other people and ourselves. I believe that the days of awe are really the best holidays we have, the most joyous time, the time where we get to, you know, come together as a community, even if you're online, but really the point is where we get to start again. We really, really can wipe some slates clean and start again and connect ourselves, as the liturgy does, first to the universality of the Jewish people, of who we are in the world. And our service does it twice. First, by saying the opening to the service, the warm-up is all about creation. And also in the Uvachein paragraphs, the first part's about creation. Then the second Uvachein paragraph is about the Jewish peoplehood. And the second part of the service is about Shema, which is about God is one, and Judaism, and tzitzit, and remember the mitzvot. And then the third part of the service is that individual amida, which is about the individual person and our individual behavior. So the format of the service follows these concentric circles of universal, I belong to all of humanity. Particularistic, I belong to the world, to the Jewish world. And then personal, I am responsible for my own behavior. What an exciting time for me and for each of you. I'm going to end now with one note, which is I hope that people find something in the High Holy Day liturgy that you love. And I hope that people go into the High Holiday period with a sense of flexibility. Synagogues around the world are trying to figure out how to get it as good as possible. But how fortunate are we that we have technology, that we have vaccines, that we have masks, that we have the ability to keep each other safe while spending time on our precious souls. So it's not going to be like it was 3 years ago, 2 years ago. It's not going to be like it was last year. But as any scientist knows, stasis is death, and we are going to keep evolving and changing and keep moving towards the ultimate goal, which is lihitpalel, to do introspection. I want to end with a couple musical notes. First, I let the cantor know that we must do El Norah, and he said, yeah, we do it. It is just my favorite of all the piyutim. Do you know it, El Norah? El Norah alila, El Norah alila, Hamselanu mechila, Bisha'at hane'ila. And it is about the gates closing. It's a beautiful poem. Look at the end of Ne'ilah, the beginning of Ne'ilah. It's right before the repetition of the Amida. But it comes from the Sephardic tradition, and so does the tune. And what it reminds us in one of the last verses is that there are angels walking through this world with us. Look around. Who are the angels in your life on this Zoom? Who's helping you out? Maybe someone in your house, in your community. But there are angels. And that, like, this other incredible message of Ne'ilah is that the gates do close. There's a finality to our lives. And there's a sense that we got to hurry. We have to apologize. We have to start doing better. And that's exciting. It's exciting that we have a fresh spiritual start. Thank you. I want to tell you of 3 upcoming programs that I'm doing, but first say that next week, Bob Lebo will be going into the individual piyutim. So it'll be more, not larger picture, but individual. This Friday night, I am hosting, I forget what it's called even. Can someone tell me what it's called? The end of the month thing?
Wind down the week or something.
Wind down the week. I'm hosting Wind Down the Week, except I am doing something that I used to do with my friend Lee over here, which is I'm going to do excerpts from what I call Spa for the Soul. And so we'll be doing some meditation, some Hebrew singing, and some really just quiet time and chanting together. So I hope you'll join me outside at 5 o'clock. You can wear a mask. I think we'll be on Zoom as well. At 5:45, there's a little bit of like refreshment, I believe. And then at 6:30 is Tefillah as our service. But come as you are. And then I'm offering 2 alternative spiritual experiences on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. I want you to come to the traditional ones, but I also would love for you to come to the alternatives. The alternatives, the first will be 4:15 Rosh Hashanah afternoon. 4:15 till about 5:05 or so. It will be with musical instruments. So if that's something that doesn't work for you, don't come to that. But if it's something that you'd be interested in, it's outside in the tent, and it's some Hebrew chanting and learning and parts of a Rosh Hashanah service. On Yom Kippur afternoon, after the Yom Kippur Forum, I'll also be offering what I call Contemplative Yaskar and a healing service. So for Contemplative Yaskar, it will be a time where we can share something about our loved ones, and not just privately, but with the group, and do some prayers of healing as well. I look forward to celebrating the high holidays in my new home here with you, but then even more important, to coming to Zman Simchatenu, the time of our joy, to Sukkot with everyone together. We'll email these texts to you, and I'm going to leave it open now, the chat, for a few minutes if people have any comments or questions. And thank you.
Yasher koach.
Toda rabah.
Yasher koach.
Thanks.
Thank
Shana
you.
Tova to everybody.
Shana Tova. Anyone have questions, comments?
Rabbi, I just asked you in the chat, what are we doing for Tashlich?
Great, I'm happy to tell you. But also what I was going to say is questions, comments, or good brisket recipes, anything like that. So
I have one.
This is what we're doing. We want to make sure, and I'm so happy to have our Vice President for Religious, all kinds of stuff, Nancy Lewis, and my wing woman here. So we want to make the day good for as many as possible. Tashlich is at Lake Carnegie at 5:30. But if you have little ones in your house, we feel bad that we are not letting them in the building. We do, but it's a safety measure for everyone. So actually at 9 a.m., the cantor and I will be outside with Sharon Diamondstein, 9 a.m., leading a service for our families of elementary age. Then we'll come in and hopefully wash off or something, because it might be really hot, and lead the rest of the service. Well, I'm doing my alternative spiritual experience on the campus. Sharon Diamondstein will be over at Lake Carnegie at 4:45 for a family program with a USY-based magician. So just something fun for kids. And then we hope that families will stay. And at 5:30, I'll be leading Tashlich at Lake Carnegie. More questions? Objections? Answers?
You can bring your dog to Tashlich. People always bring their dogs.
I know, but I'll be here leading a service. And actually, I think my dog's going to go to doggy daycare that day. So,
If anybody's interested in being an usher, we are looking for ushers. Jeremy Black, I think, sent out a sign-up genius for ushers.
And Jeremy's also looking for people to help build Sukkot on the 12th of September. Lee, how far are you from Princeton?
I think maybe like 45, 50 minutes, not sure.
All right, well, we hope to see your family here at some point on a Shabbos.
Oh, absolutely. And how do I get hooked up with your Zoom or live stream links for the high holidays?
What is our live stream? I know it. It's live stream.
I think we'll be on Facebook Live, Rabbi.
No, we're actually doing live stream. So on our
Okay.
website, Lee, is the live stream, or just email me privately. Joel keeps telling me what it is and I keep forgetting.
Yeah,
But I think it's on our website.
All right. Well, thank you. Shana Tova, everybody.
Shana Tova, or Lee, email me so I can get you the Zoom links for the outside services.
Okay, sounds great.
And love to Andrea.
Shana Tova.
So I was surprised that this turned out to be all Zoom tonight, because I thought we were being.
Who is speaking?
It's Debbie Dunn Solomon. Oh,
Yeah.
So this got switched to Zoom, and I'm a little confused actually about what all the options are for the high holidays, or what you're encouraging people to do.
Yeah, let me explain. So first of all, I'm encouraging you to do what makes you feel safe. We are wide open, and I think we have about 300 people who want to be in person, and they are welcome. We also have people who feel like the Delta variant is really too dangerous for them to be out. We'll have two ways of watching services and being part of them. One will be by live stream, and the other will be by Zoom. That is my understanding thus far from Joel. Our safety committee is meeting later this week. Nancy and I don't see that there'll be large changes to this, but we want to keep everyone safe. You will be able to be in the building if you are vaccinated and have a mask on. You will be able to be on live stream. You will be able to be on Zoom. You will be able to go to a family service, a kids service, a teen service, a tot service, all outside on the campus in tents. This is very intense, besides it being intense. And kudos to our High Holiday Committee, to Nancy, Barbara, and to Avi, the Religious Committee, for thinking about all of these issues as well. To the Honors Committee, there are less honors being given out this year because
we want fewer, there'll be fewer people on the Bima.
We want less Bima traffic.
And on our new accessible Bima, and it looks like we will make it under the wire, and we will be in the sanctuary.
Bli neder.
Bli neder, correct.
Bli neder.
So we're hoping. But as Rabbi said, you can come in the building, you can stay out of the building, you could just, there's lots of choices. It's kind of cool.
It will not be a produced service as it was last year, in that it will feel like the service is in the building and you'll be able to see it. Or you can come to Tashlich, or you can come to one of our outside. On the Yom Kippur right now we're planning.
Or you can come to everything.
Yeah,
That's the best way.
That's funny. Nancy, I guess you could be in shul with your phone and watching it at the same time.
No, I don't think so.
No. But also, you know, it's important that we remember that we're still in a pandemic. So do what makes you feel safe and make sure you have some good food. Thank you. Laila Tov.
Laila Tov.
Laila Tov. You all be